Good evening to the Board of Selectmen's meeting on Tuesday, May the 5th, 2015. Just remind everybody that this meeting is being recorded, and as we start all of our meetings, we wish to take a moment of silence and appreciation of our brave servicemen and women that are serving around the world, especially those in Afghanistan and other places of conflict. Thank you. Tonight we have two appointments. One will begin momentarily at 7 o'clock with Lucille Fisher and Aditi Thatte of Medfield Cable TV. And at 7:15, we will have developer Robert Borrelli and attorney James Murphy, along with the Medfield Historical Commission, over discussion on 3 Metacomet Street.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you, Lucille. Good evening. My name is Patty Lynch, and I'm a member of the board of Medfield TV. It is with great pleasure that I submit to you our plan for the Ed Doherty Memorial Garden. The memorial garden we are proposing is the expression of our appreciation to Ed. It is our way of recognizing his consistent volunteer contributions to Medfield. Edward Patrick Doherty was a Medfield resident where he lived with his wife, Liz, and his 4 children, Patty, Nancy, Eddie, and Mark Doherty. Ed was very active in our community throughout the 45 years that he lived here. He was the president of Medfield Youth Baseball, the vice president of Medfield Youth Hockey, a member of the Medfield Lions Club, a member of the board of directors for Medfield's 325th and 350th anniversary celebrations, the chairman of the American Red Cross Bloodmobile, the founder of the Medfield Over the Hill Mothball League. Ed was a member of the Warrant Committee and the board of directors at Medfield TV. Ed was also the host of 2 regularly broadcast shows on Medfield TV called Sharing Stories and Eye on Medfield. The Ed Doherty Garden is conceived and funded by Medfield TV with additional support from community members and interested organizations. The garden design was donated and created by Monique Allen and the Garden Continuum. Monique worked with Ed to develop a gardening show for Medfield TV and wanted to contribute to the project. The garden is designed around a granite bench that we hope to place right off of a young crab apple tree next to Baxter Pond. We believe this tree was one of the trees planted during the 350th anniversary celebration for Medfield. As many of you know, this was a project that Ed worked hard on as a member of the steering committee. This garden will serve as a wonderful tribute to Ed's lifelong community service. The memorial garden we are proposing is a most fitting expression of our appreciation to Ed. We also hope that it will serve to honor him as well as inspire others to find satisfaction in volunteering and donating to their community. It is our hope that you will see fit to approve this plan this evening, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Patty. You cannot get a better individual in my mind than Ed Doherty. I knew Ed for a long, long time, and he just was a saint of a person, and would give the back off of his shirt off of his back, and just was so involved, and he loved Medfield, and he loved Medfield TV as well. So I don't think there's anyone more deserving than certainly Ed Doherty. Gentlemen, comments?
Yeah, so just to clarify, so it's in the corner of, by the pond and stuff, across from Dwight Derby, kind of in that, tucked in that corner and stuff like that, just so everyone kind of knows where that is.
Yeah,
like that.
it's right at the end of Baker's Pond,
Yep.
Fieldstone Wall. You see that in the
Yep.
drawing down here, Fieldstone Wall. And then on the other side is Upham Road.
Yep.
So it's just a little spit of land right across. The beautiful thing is it's right across from the Dwight Derby house. Like the 300, all the symbolism is there. The 350th Medfield Day and how he was so involved in, reporting Medfield Day for Medfield TV. So, I mean, it's just a great little space.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah, it'd be good.
situated right there.
So this is where the park bench is already there?
Yes, there is one. A little further down, there's a park bench, but so the bench, the concrete bench that's being donated will it be up further. And, yeah.
So where's the,
It's separate from that location. It's a little bit, I want to say north, but I don't know.
More
that-
towards the Dwight Derby House.
And it's a granite bench.
so this is at the corner then?
Yeah,
The corner of the
Yes.
pond, kind of, yeah,
Right.
kind of the corner of the
Right.
pond.
In the corner of Upham
so
Road and
Frary
Frary.
and
yes, yeah.
Frary and Upham Road.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great spot for a park.
It is. It
Richard was
is.
talking about putting a park there a year or two ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only, I think it's an excellent idea.
Yeah.
My only suggestion is, I believe that's under Park and Rec's jurisdiction, that, to make sure that you notify Park and Rec.
Right.
And get their approval on that. I know also that there is a gold award or a gold candidate for Girl Scouts that's looking to put a bridge that will go over the spillway there. And we had talked with Downtown Study Committee, and I know the town planner, Sarah Raposa, is working at calling for a summit. She said it's still in the work. That would include Baker's Pond, Meeting House Pond area as well. So my only hesitation would just be to make sure that the other groups that are also looking at that are also informed, so that it's not going to go somewhere and then some other group had an idea or something, so that we can coordinate everything together on that. Because I think it's just a plus. I've been concerned with that area. I think if you look at the original master plan that the Downtown Study Committee did, that was a key area. It said Medfield needs to focus on its water, meaning Vine Brook and Baker's Meeting House Pond area. And so I think this is great that we're putting attention to that. But my suggestion would be to make sure that we tie in the other groups so that everybody knows what we're doing and we can work together on that.
Okay,
I know
Aditi.
that when, go ahead.
Aditi?
I just wanted to make a point that we had conversations with Park and Rec director before, and I think we just need to get back and let the new person know too, and then coordinate with the other committees. We hadn't thought about that, if there's other things going on, so we'll definitely do that.
Okay.
Well, this has actually been in the works for about a year and a
Right,
half.
right.
So, you know, and then with just the new studio and the horrible winter we've had, it just kept getting pushed back.
Because maybe, Mark, is it actually Park and Rec who would make that decision, or is it the Board of Selectmen?
For maintenance, I guess.
No, to permission to use it.
It's not entirely clear to me whose particular jurisdiction that comes under at that particular point,
But
because it's near the street. So that's one aspect. Number two is the need to clear Conservation Commission because of the proximity to the pond.
Oh,
That's interesting.
And number three, and I mentioned this earlier to them, we'll hope they will stay far enough away from the street so that it doesn't get plowed in under a ton of snow the first winter.
Yeah,
So
Monique really took, I think, a lot of this all into consideration, as well as the plants that are
Hardy,
indigenous.
yeah.
They're hardy. They don't require a lot of. It actually sounds like her speech the other night, but that they, just don't require a lot of care.
Yeah.
So it's going to be very easy to maintain and.
yeah, as long as they're back, 'cause
Nothing weird.
sometimes you remember the piles of snow that were at the intersections.
Yeah.
You'd have to have very hardy if they're not back far enough. So I just check with Ken or Bobby Kennedy and make sure that where
Sure.
you're putting them will be, they might be able to put snow stakes or something to indicate where, so it'll stay far enough away from it.
That sounds good.
so it sounds like if you can make sure that you touch base with Park and Rec, I guess the Conservation Commission, Ken Feeney, with the highway, and I would just add Sarah Raposa on that
Yeah.
larger scale.
I'll see her tomorrow.
So, I mean, that seems like a
Yeah.
lot, but that's 4 different, I just want to make sure that everybody knows
Absolutely.
what we're doing.
Sure,
And that once it gets in there, somebody's not going to dig it up or do something.
right.
Rest of the board, do you want a motion, should we make a motion then with this board, and then Park and Rec maybe do the similar?
Yeah, there's certainly
Yeah.
no downside to that.
Okay.
I would move that we endorse the creation of the Ed Doherty Memorial Garden and the sites indicated.
I'll second that.
And all in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
good, excellent.
I'm just remembering, Richard, that when you were proposing working in that area, and I remember we actually went out and toured it, that there were some untoward issues that came up as part of that discussion, but I'm not remembering what they were.
Well, one issue was dealing with the dam that was there, if a bridge was going over, whether that was secure enough, and we checked with Ken, and that
Yeah,
was.
that would-
The
that
other
would've
issue,
bothered me.
the other issue was, First Church on the far side of the pond owns probably half to more
Park.
of
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
property.
they do.
But that's on the other
Right,
side.
right,
of-
on the others, yeah.
on the other side of the pond.
We're not
and that was an
touching that.
issue. And the other issue was with the Hope, right now, Frary Street along that pond, I think looks ugly. I mean, there's a couple of dead trees, you know,
I think there's a lot of bamboo that grows up in this area, unfortunately.
there's some beautiful pictures of the pond in its heydays with trees that go down Frary Street. And hopefully, maybe this would be a kickoff to revitalize that area. I know the cultural district folks also looked at that area, and that's part of the cultural district
Right,
that's
right.
in that area. And I just think it's an underused area, and as the downtown becomes more alive and more used, I think hopefully things will spread over into the Meeting House Pond area. It's just a great spot right in the center of town.
Well, a good kickoff for that, kind of jumpstart of that area, I
Yeah.
think it would
Yeah,
be a good
and we're
start.
hoping to have it, we're hoping to dedicate it like a week before Medfield Day. We're hoping, yeah, to have it all finished and dedicated,
Yep.
you know, before Medfield Day 2015.
Good.
So
So we
I
will
think
check with all that. Richard, can you get us the name of the Girl Scout?
I can.
Okay.
Good.
All right, that's great.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you so much.
Thank you for doing this.
And
You know, as part of, or in conjunction with this, I would suggest that as a Board of Selectmen, that we task the tree warden, is he called the tree warden?
Yep.
With looking at maybe if we could plant some trees down along Frary Street next to the pond.
think I
Yeah,
can.
keep in mind, though, that
The road's right there.
Medfield Day, that's where they put all their booths along the pond there.
Yeah, but
so,
they could work around trees.
Yeah, otherwise, I
I mean,
noticed,
they've got them marked out, especially if you planted the trees right at the junction of the booths, it wouldn't interfere with them at all.
we can certainly ask them to take a look, and you have to be careful with the species, so the rocks,
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
roots don't grow into the pond wall, so. It's a difficult area with, keeping in mind Medfield Day and how the booths, they kind of set up along there. So you have
Is,
to-
in this Thursday's Hometown Weekly, a local writer will have a story about Meeting House Pond with a great photo.
Oh, really? I wonder if we
Yes.
know who the local writer is. Like one shot?
Anyone
Can one
we
guess?
know?
With a great photo of the trees that
Oh, great.
lined
Oh, really? Oh, good.
Baker's Pond that were there. But actually, we asked the tree warden when he came here, he was going to put together a
An inventory.
well, and also kind of a master plan of weird trees, so maybe we could ask him, I know in your calendar, when Ken is coming in, maybe we could see if Ed could come in with him. Okay,
Good.
it's 7:15, and we have Mr. Borrelli and Attorney Murphy. Let me just try to set up a couple of ground rules, if I will. We'll hear, and Mark, correct me if I'm off on this, but we'll hear from the attorney, we'll then hear from the Historical Commission. I guess we'll then hear from if there's any abutters or other residents or anyone that would like to have anything to say. and then we come back to the Board of Selectmen.
Let me, if I may, Mr. Chairman, put this in context. This is a local bylaw enacted under town's home rule authority. There's no statutory provision for this. And it is triggered by a determination that a property is a historically significant structure. And there are, as Attorney Murphy indicated in his memo to you, and I concur, certain criteria to determine that. So that is a determination, that's the relevant consideration here, is whether or not it's a historically significant structure. Now, the Historic Commission apparently made that determination. Nevertheless, they did not provide, in my opinion, sufficient documentation to support their position in terms of findings or what have you. So you have merely recitation of the criteria in the bylaw without more. So I think it's incumbent upon you to hold a new hearing tonight and make that determination whether or not this is a historically significant structure, and then you proceed from there as to whether it should be preferably preserved.
Okay, maybe the Historical Commission will be able to respond to that. So then do I officially call this as a?
It's a hearing.
Okay, we'll open this then as a hearing, and Mr. Murphy, we'll turn it over to you first.
Thank you very much. James Murphy, I'm an attorney. I represent Medfield Investment LLC. They submitted a demolition permit request to the building department. It then triggered under, as Mr. Sorrell mentioned, your local bylaw, a review by the Medfield Historical Commission. The only reason why it triggered it under the various standards that were available was that it is a building or a structure which was constructed 50 or more years prior to the date of the application. There are other avenues for other properties in town in which there are reviews. Typically, they're in a designated historic district, or they are part of the archaeological protection district, which this is not. So the only reason this is here is because it's a 50-year-old building. This particular structure at 3 Metacomet was built according to the assessor's records in and about 1950. And it is one of approximately, and we have a list for you, one of approximately 150 Cape-style buildings that were constructed between the end of World War II and late 1940s through 1960. So we have a list that we have as part of this here, which we can submit for you. There is nothing, as we say in our memo, that makes this one of 3 things that I think triggers a finding by the Historic Commission. Yeah, you have to find that something's distinctive, significant, and important. And the way in which it happens is that it can happen through different things. It could be because it's a historic person or event. It could be because it's historically or architecturally important. So the easiest way to think about that is if, in fact, this was a very poorly constructed house, but it happened to be the courthouse at Appomattox where Grant and Lee met, well, despite whatever condition the structure was, that would still be something that you would see as historic. Similarly, again, if it could be a very rundown house, but it could have been by Frank Lloyd Wright. And again, it could have been something that's significant because of an event or a architect. It could be important because of something unique to Medfield. In other words, something unique in Medfield happened. But none of those things happened in this particular property. The only uniqueness it has is more infamy than fame, and that is that for a considerable period of time, it has not been paying taxes to the town, and it is in significant disrepair. From what we understand, there's no longer a heating system there, and they use kerosene for the property. So the starting point, I think, is a very poor point for it to be a historically significant structure. We did go to the Historical Commission in a follow-up visit with them to try to see whether or not we could persuade them and perhaps a reconsideration to see whether or not they would reconsider their delay. And what they pointed out to us was something which they called that it had a streetscape, or that there was an important streetscape. Well, again, this is a very, I don't think this fits, because really what you have is you have a rectangular house on a rectangular small lot, approximately a quarter of an acre in size. And what we did is we also have for you a printout of the cards for all of the other 5 buildings on the street. And what you'd find when you see those other 5 buildings on the street, you find 2 other capes built in around 1950. You find 2 other colonials built around 1960. And you find 1 old historic 1860 colonial. So again, there's not as if there is a landscape that would be subject to protection by a historic commission. We also, what we did is, out of this long list of almost 150 other capes, we took a sampling from other field cards that we have here for you, in which we printed out like 19 different types of capes. And there's really kind of 3 general types. There's one that has like a little V, I'll call it, around the front door. There's one that's basically pretty much flat. And there's the one that has the 2 little dormer windows. Those are the types of capes that you'll see all over town. So we have those for you. When you're considering this, you'd say to yourself, which I think this town really has had experience with, is it likely that someone would want to move this house to another location? And you would say to yourself, okay, say this owner doesn't want that house. Is it important enough for Medfield that this is the type of house that they would move someplace else? And I think certainly you're going to say no. Another way you could look at it is there a likelihood that someone would want to remove and keep a proportion of the windows or the doors or something distinctive. But again, it's very common. It's hard to say to somebody that you have a common property, but that's what you have. So this is a situation in which there is great power that town meeting has given the Historic Commission. But because it's great power and it affects the personal property rights of someone, it should be used exceedingly sparingly and only in those rare situations where it is truly important to Medfield. And this is not one of those cases. So we have these handouts. I don't know what the practice of the board is, and I apologize for that. I do have adequate number of copies for each of the board members. I can pass those out to you. Well, that's our presentation.
Okay, sure.
Anything that you want in the record, I would suggest you submit to the chair, and so note.
As Mr. Sorrell suggests, so what we have is we have a listing that we got from the assessor of the approximately 150 capes built between 1946, I believe, and 1960. We have a 19-page handout of a variety of other similar capes in the RU district, which this is in, throughout the town.
Yep.
And then we have the printouts of the 5 cards for Metacomet Street itself. And so that's what we have there.
And is that the end of your presentation, Mr. Murphy? Okay.
Thank you.
We have a number of members of the Historical Commission that are here.
You want to give the assistant town administrator one set down there? Her, down the end.
Christine, yeah.
Because she's going to she'll compile the official minutes.
I think we'd also like to have in the record my actual writing, if that's not already in there too.
That's fine.
Okay.
And
Good, thank you.
Mr. Bible,
Yes, sir.
who is co-chair of the Medfield Historical Commission.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you. Mr. Murphy made a statement which I think is very important, and I want to address it as a homeowner and as a taxpayer in Medfield. The Historic Commission, I think, wants to do 2 things that are very important. Number one, as Mr. Murphy said, we want to respect the rights of property owners. We do have some power over that, and we understand that. We think that's very, very important. And at the same time, we need to protect and preserve as much as we can the historical significance of the town of Medfield. These are two sometimes conflicting goals, and we try to balance them. We think it is a very important mission. I appreciate Mr. Murphy bringing that up. I want to say a couple of things. Mr. Murphy also said that we have a very serious power, and it needs to be used very sparingly. I agree with that. And in fact, we've looked through our records over the past 25 years since the town meeting passed this in 1994, and in over 75% of the cases where a demolition application has come before us, we have approved the demolition. We have approved the demolition at the hearing. And in the few cases where we did place a demolition delay on properties, in many cases we've lifted that demolition delay before the period expired because the applicant was able to give us information about why the property could not be salvaged, saved, moved, or rehabilitated. So I agree with Mr. Murphy. We have a strong power, and I think we use it very sparingly. But let me tell you what the process is. And I think that's the most important thing here. Whether this particular house is saved or not is not that important. What's important is the process that the Historic Commission uses. There was a public hearing held on March 11th, which was duly advertised, and the abutters were notified. The applicant or designee was not at the hearing, and I understand there was a conflict with a different town board at that time, and did inform us that he would not be able to attend. But the hearing was advertised at a specific time, and we did hold the hearing then. The bylaws of the town of Medfield are a little specify in somewhat general terms what criteria may be used to determine the finding of the commission. The historic significance is not the only criteria. Mr. Murphy mentioned that, and I've heard this from other people as well. It didn't matter whether George Washington slept there or not. There are other criteria to be used. The bylaw states this bylaw was adopted for the purpose of protecting the historic, archaeological, and aesthetic resources of the town of Medfield. And I want to emphasize that aesthetic resources. It's not history, but aesthetic resources. And in section 2.3, historically significant structure, any building, structure, or archaeological site or portion thereof which is, in section B, historically or architecturally important by reason of period, style, method of construction, or association with a particular architect or builder, either by itself or in the context of a group of buildings or structures. And I think this is the important part which we looked at. Yes, it's true that nobody of significance that I'm aware of lived in this particular building. And yes, it is true that there are other capes in the town of Medfield. But what we were looking at on top of those, in addition to those things, is the context in which it's in. I've given you a set of pictures. These are the other 6 buildings on Metacomet Street. None of them, they're not identical. This does not look like Lowell Mason Street, where all the houses are almost exactly alike except for minor additions. These are small, single-family houses that have a neighborhood context. This is one of the criteria that we're allowed to look at by the bylaw, which we did look at. The minutes of the meeting, I could read them to you, but basically, we discussed many of these factors at that meeting. A number of the abutters were present as well. We listened to what they said. They were concerned about the scale of any new construction there, and although we listened to them, the opinions of the abutters were not determinative of what we were looking at. The bylaws require the commission to immediately impose a demolition delay at the time of the vote if a vote is taken. And at the same time, I want to make it clear that the commission is more than willing to listen to the applicant, who can tell us if the building is in such deplorable condition that it can't be saved, that it can't be moved, that it can't be rehabilitated. And we're more than happy to have an applicant come before us at a subsequent meeting to give us that information. This has happened many times in the past. We've listened to applicants, and if they can tell us why this building can't be rehabilitated or restored, we're more than willing to listen to them and to lift the demolition delay. We have done this at the same meeting in other cases where we're required by the bylaw to have this vote. We're required by the bylaw to impose this demolition delay, but at the same time, if the applicant can tell us why this is not practical or feasible, we can lift it at that time. So we've invited the applicant to come before us. We have another meeting next Wednesday. We're more than happy to have Mr. Borrelli and Mr. Murphy come there and tell us why the building can't be saved. They did not do this at our last meeting. They actually told us they wanted to have this hearing first before they would come before us and tell us why they can't do this. And the fact that it's in bad condition, and we've seen houses in bad condition. This is in bad condition. There's no question about that. The person who's living there hasn't kept it up well. There is no heat. There is a smell of kerosene. Many of these things can be remedied by cleaning. We didn't see this as being a drop-dead issue. So we're more than happy to hear Mr. Borrelli or Mr. Murphy. We have a meeting on the 13th, and they're obviously invited to attend that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the Historical Commission? Yes.
In light of the advice that I gave to the board at the commencement, I would point out to Mr. Bible that, and offer him the opportunity, either he or other members of the Historical Commission, to specifically indicate which criteria this house satisfies in order to be historically significant structure in their determination.
Okay, I'll be happy to do that. As stated in the minutes of our meeting, the commission members discussed their opinions of the house in its context in history and in the neighborhood. Members of the commission spoke of its place in the history of the architecture of our town. It is a good and classic example of its style and time period, but it is also an interesting, unique qualities such as scale and layout that set it apart from other capes in the town. The neighborhood context was discussed both by the commission and the abutters that were present. So we looked at the fact that, yes, it's a cape, there are other capes, but it's of a particular size. It's a small cape. It fits into the context of the neighborhood as the bylaws allow us to consider, and these are the criteria that we looked at. It is not significant in the sense that Mr. Murphy pointed out, that the Declaration of Independence wasn't signed here. Frank Lloyd Wright didn't design it, but it is significant in its size, in its scale, in its context. And I believe that the bylaws, as passed by town meeting, allow us to look at these criteria.
Anything else? Other members of the Historical Commission that have anything to add? Cheryl O'Malley?
I'm just going to add to that size and context.
Yeah, anything you want to add in the hearing concerning 3 Metacomet?
I agree that, capes are a dime a dozen usually, almost anywhere. And most of us don't realize there's a difference between capes. So I want to point out the differences. There is a full cape, a half cape, and a 3/4 cape. This happens to be a half cape, which is an early on. If it doesn't look like the Peak House, if everybody looks at it, it does. And that's because after a certain time frame, they started to refer to all those kinds of structures as a Cape Cod structure. So that includes even the Peak House. And who determined that was Timothy Dwight, who made a visit to this area in the late 1800s, and that's when they started calling this type of house a Cape Cod house. So with that, I want you to look at, and I apologize for my printer, I was running out of ink, so it's got some lines going on it. But if you look at the house, this is it, all right? And if you take off the addition, It looks exactly like that half cape picture that I showed earlier. So half capes were before. They weren't used that much later. The post-World War II era was the era of the three-quarter and the full-size cape. So we can sort of look at this as a possibility of being a much older structure than we are assuming it is. That's all I have.
Anything else from the Historical Commission?
Anselin Wolf, member. I just wanted to point out that Medfield is following sort of a national precedent. When the National Historic Preservation Act was passed in 1966, among other things, it said the buildings that matter are not just where Lafayette slept or the treaty was signed. The buildings that also matter are where the common man lived, the background buildings. The Preservation Act was passed partly in response to urban renewal, which had cleared vast swaths of neighborhoods, of homes of the common person, and they left us missing some of our history. So the Preservation Act said the small buildings matter too. The other thing that it really pointed out was that history is a continuum. That's why we have a 50-year cutoff. We have to have a cutoff somewhere. We know history continues, but let's be reasonable. Let's have a marker where we say, if it's 50 years old, we will look at it, and maybe it isn't significant, but before it disappears, let's give it a little bit of a second chance. Let's see what it means. I think this particular house, with its floor plan, is quite unusual. I haven't been in every cape in Medfield, but it is an unusual floor plan. We felt that it had enough architectural interest to merit another day in the sun, another look. Is there a way to reuse it? Is there a way to save it? This is based on national precedent.
Anyone else from the Historical Commission? Any townspeople, neighbors, anyone that wants to add anything? Okay, with this board, let me, we'll turn it over to the selectmen for comments. Let me just, first of all, thank the Historical Commission for a couple of things. One, you're volunteers, you give up of your time at no pay, and you're representing the citizens of Medfield, because if you don't represent them dealing with issues of historical preservation, no one else is. The town, we have appointed you to do just that. And I just want to thank the board for volunteering the time. There's many nights that you put in. You don't have lawyers that are here representing you. You're volunteer citizens that are doing the very best to represent those interests. Just like we have a conservation commission that represents a conservation interest and a water and sewer board. So I've attended many of your meetings, and just what Dan has said, in fact, I probably would be a little trying to push you to maybe take more action on some of those, but I think you said 74% you actually approve. So it's not like this board is just holding everybody up. You actually, I think, go the other way, and I know I've heard from Dan numerous times, respecting the rights of the property owner. That's always the first thing that's out of your mouth. So I just want to thank the board for your work and all that you do on behalf of the town, and I'll hold my other comments and give the other members a chance. Mark?
Well, I think just a couple comments I have. I think the most overriding thing that I'm always thinking about is the rights of the individual property owner. We've all invested, us that own homes in any community, have usually put our life savings towards our home and stuff, and something we maintain. So I think we obviously always have to be very, very careful that the town does not infringe upon that property owner in order to be able to do whatever they so desire with their property, and not to have someone else pass judgment on what they feel is right or not right as far as what someone does with their house, as long as they abide by the law and regulations. So I'm always concerned about that, and I think that's something that we always have to make sure that we stay focused on, is what, and you talked about that you do take that into account very seriously, because that's really what our country is really founded on, rights and property owner rights. A lot of that did not exist in England and stuff like that, and that's why we have the Registry of Deeds. That's why, land records are public records, so that we can all see what everyone's doing, and there's no secrets, and there's no hidden agendas. So I think that's just very, very important. And I guess the other concern I have is, since we had amended this bylaw a couple of town meetings ago, and we've got the 50-year threshold, the concern that I now have with it in hindsight is that's almost every house in Medfield applies. I mean, the vast majority of the houses were built in the 50s and 60s, or they soon will be, it will be applicable to them. So I'm concerned that anytime anything comes up with, the vast majority of houses in Medfield, we're going to be faced with that. And I'm not quite sure if 50 years is really the right threshold. Not that we can solve it tonight, but I'm just concerned that maybe that's too young. I mean, a house was built in 1959. It's a raised ranch, and it's like, whatever, it's nothing special. But once again, we'd be falling under that, that criteria very soon. So that's just some of the comments I have, that I'm just, trying to think of the big picture. And property owner rights, I'm very, very concerned about, that we don't step on people's toes or infringe upon their rights arbitrarily.
And Pete?
My first question would be, is Mr. Borrelli the owner at this point? Whose property rights are we talking about? I was guessing that it was still under a purchase and sale agreement pending some sort of permit.
It is under a purchase and sale agreement. It has been continued twice because of this and other issues with.
So that the demolition delay is going to affect the current owner's rights, then, not Mr. Borrelli's rights so much.
The current owner also signed the application for the demolition permit,
yeah.
and closing is scheduled for next Tuesday, the 12th.
Yeah. Mark, have you reviewed Mr. Murphy's letter to us of March 20?
Yes.
Do you agree with his analysis of our bylaw? Because I don't have the bylaw in front of me.
Yes. He actually has the bylaw there, and that was the whole point of my initial part of my presentation. There are specific criteria. I mean, there's been mouth service paid here to the recognition of property rights. It's more than a principle, whatever. It's the foundation of court decisions in the Commonwealth, and municipalities have a right to reasonably regulate. When the regulation goes beyond reasonableness, then there are problems. So it's a balancing.
Is our bylaw a problem, or is it the application of the bylaw that's?
It's the application, in
Yeah,
my
okay, so
opinion, in this case, the Historic Commission ought to have done what you folks did tonight, and then made specific findings as to the factual basis for which of the criteria in either A or B under historically significant structure they felt were satisfied.
But didn't they do that? I just heard Dan basically list that into your question there. I think he did that, did he not?
Well, I have to respectfully disagree with the interpretation of and the reading of it in terms of the neighborhood and where things fit. I think what Selectman Fisher alluded to was that virtually every house in town can fall into these criteria if they're applied overly broadly. And as to the 50 years, that was an issue which I raised the last time this was reviewed for amendment, and my recommendations were not followed. There are many communities that cut it off at a particular year. At any rate, it is what it is. However, you have specific criteria here, and whoever is applying it is bound to satisfy those criteria as a precondition of moving forward. The sanction being the imposition of an 18-month delay when somebody in essence can't do anything with their property.
So I don't see the historic district commission's decision in our
This is
material.
just historic commission, this isn't the
Historic
district.
commission.
If it were a historic district, it would be a completely different scenario, and that is statutory incidentally.
Okay, so it's the historic commission, and I just got handed it, so I'll take a look at that. Is our function to review the propriety of their hearing, or are we doing a de novo hearing where we're just gonna make a decision on our own based on
Great
the-
question, because all the bylaw provides is that the applicant may appeal to the Board of Selectmen, and that's
So
all
we can
that's there.
decide how we wanna do it either way, apparently, then.
Correct.
Okay.
Was not architectural one of the categories in the bylaw?
Historically or architecturally important by reason of period, style, method of construction, or association with a particular architect or builder, either by itself or in the context of a group of buildings or structures.
On the paragraph A above that, Mark, it has a very broad definition that it's importantly associated with one or more historic persons or events. Well, that's not the case. But then it's this very broad statement with the architectural, cultural, political, economic, social history of the town of Medfield. I mean, that's just wide open for anything, basically.
Well, there has to be some constraint, some reasonable constraint in the interpretation, or there'll be a question whether it passes legal muster.
Well, but that's what the bylaw says. And if you apply that in terms of cultural, political, economic, that, I mean, as Mark says.
Even if that's the case, this is,
Why that
as was
different?
alluded to, this is a post-World War II one-story house, whether it's a
Yeah,
cape
well,
or
it's not
whatever you
important
want
to
to
me,
call it.
It's part of that history of that time, but it's not an era that appeals to me much in terms of its architecture or housing or, I was gonna say, I lived in this house at one point, but it was in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And it didn't have a second floor. I guess it disturbs me that no one came to the hearing, and that was just because there was a conflict, but the Historic Commission knew ahead of time that he had a conflict and wouldn't be able to attend?
said he would be late
And he did come at the very end of the meeting.
after
Oh, okay.
decided.
Oh, all right.
And if I can,
You said.
as I stated when I was speaking earlier, we've invited Mr. Borrelli to come to our hearing on the 13th, and if he can give us information about why the building cannot be saved, if it has mold, if it has other structural defects, we're more than happy to hear him. And if he can give us information, we can lift the demolition delay at that time. And I would say, whether you decide to lift this or not, as is your prerogative, I think. I don't know. Mr. Sorrell can tell you whether you could actually do that. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. I think what's important is we have a process which we've been using, which we believe is spelled out in the bylaws. Whoever wrote this there was a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of ambiguity in these various provisions here. We have a process. We've tried to do this to the best of our ability. As I said before, at least 75% of the time, we have allowed the demolition to go through. So I don't think we're being arbitrary. I don't think we're being punitive. I do think that we are respectful of the property owner's rights. Each member on the Historic Commission is a property owner in Medfield, and we understand that we are taking, to some extent, the rights of the property owner if we put a demolition delay on it. We do this very sparingly. And so I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. I think we have a process that works, that is transparent, that is open. If you vote to overrule us, I don't have any problem with that, because I think this is part of the process. And I think whatever we do, what I was told by David Temple, who's the other co-chair, is in the 25 years that this act has been in force, there has been only one other appeal to the selectmen about this, and I don't know what the result of that was, but this happens very rarely. Whatever you decide, I think I can speak for the commission as a whole. we're fine with it. But I think it's important that we have a process and we do it to the best of our ability.
Mr. Chairman, if I could make a suggestion, you could take this matter under advisement if you wanted to go take a look at the house or think about it, do further research on it, and that might give the opportunity for the Historic Commission and the owners of the property to get together again and review it in a more detailed fashion than they were able to do the last time. And then, regardless of what decision is made at that time, you could, at your next meeting or whenever you so choose, make a ruling decision on it.
Well, it's up to you. I mean, I'm very familiar with the house. I've been in the house. I know the area in the house, so I don't think I have to see it more. If the board wants to do that, I'd be glad to do it again. I'll just make a couple of comments that I picked up. One, they keep throwing that there's 150 capes in town, but almost all of them, or the vast majority of them, the Piatoni houses that were built in the Summer Street, Lowell Mason Road, Remsen Ave, that area is the bulk of them. The village area of Medfield that makes up Metacomet, Oak, and Pleasant, and a section of South, it's that flat plain area that really is unique. It is a unique village area of Medfield that's different than all the capes that are on Summer, Lowell Mason in that area. That area is not full of capes in that particular area. And the twice now, we've gone before the people of Medfield, and they've strongly supported first a 12-month and then an 18-month demolition delay bylaw. And I think the Historical Commission is trying to represent the people in the town. As I said before, they bend over backwards, in my opinion, of respecting the property owner's rights, and they've listed all kinds of statistics to that effect. And the other thing, there's a debate whether a building is structurally or cosmetically in need, and sometimes it can look a mess, but structurally the building is sound. I seem convinced that there's enough architectural value, which I believe is in that bylaw, in my mind, and I'm not going to second guess the Historical Commission, in my opinion. So if do we need to make a motion, or if there's no motion, does the existing ruling of the Historical Commission stand unless we overrule that? How does that work?
We have to do something to bring this to closure.
Yeah.
We can say goodnight. Well,
we could
let me just
take a vote.
my suggestion, which is that I'm bothered by the issues of the control over private property that Mark was raising, and given the fact that there's a purchase and sale agreement and not a purchase yet, the person who's going to be injured by that is the current owner, not Mr. Borrelli, the developer. And so that, and if Mr. Murphy is right that the person is heating the house with kerosene, that sounds like a bad situation for that person. And so that I would hope to get the sale proceeds into that person's hands as soon as we can. All that being said, I guess what I would suggest that we do is, I took a walk by the house after the baseball parade on Sunday, and so I saw it, and as I say, it's not my style of house. I wasn't impressed with it. But as a town, I feel that we have given the authority to deal with this to you people on the Historic Commission, and so that I would give you guys, I would tend to defer to your process and your decisions. But I guess what I would ask you to do is to invite Mr. Borrelli to come to your meeting on the 13th and see if you can talk and see if you can figure out a solution. And then come back to us. That would be my suggestion.
So I guess to make a vote then, I think that's a good solution. I would make a motion that we stand by the position of the Historical Commission.
I'll disagree with that.
Okay, is that seconded?
That's not exactly what I was suggesting. I was suggesting that we continue our hearing until after they've had their hearing, in order for them to have a chance to see if they can come to a conclusion together, and then we could resume our hearing after the 13th.
Okay.
So I guess my
You wanna
motion
put
would be
that
to,
into a motion?
to continue our hearing until our next meeting.
So we have a motion to continue the hearing until our next meeting. In the
Be on the
meantime,
22nd
the Historical
or
Commission and the
Okay.
developer will be able to meet. Is that seconded?
5th
That's
and
fine.
19th, maybe.
All in favor? Aye?
We vote on my motion?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
So we'll continue. our
Okay, so
hearing.
we'll continue the hearing until after the Historical Commission has their hearing.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much for coming in.
Well, Can I just ask one question before we leave this,
Okay.
Mark? Can we look at material that is not presented as part of the hearing? Because I noticed in the material here, it looked like a rendering of a house that's, I assumed was the replacement house. Are we supposed to be looking at that sort of stuff or not?
In my opinion, that's not relevant to anybody's consideration.
Okay. I didn't look
Because
at
we're
it, so.
not the
Well,
planning.
that's been a problem with the Historic Commission in the past
Yeah.
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah,
That-
no,
that's just
apparently
not
I don't
part
wanna
of
look
the-
at it.
Yeah, it's not our decision to make,
Right.
what type of a house is there.
Under old business, we have a motion to approve the minutes of April 21, 2015.
So moved, second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Aye. Just a note of thanks to both Evelyn and Christine for getting them in. Also under old business, we have the removing the tracks at Farm and Harding Street. Can we get the superintendent to begin to do that?
Yeah, we still need permission from the MBTA, and I've dug out that material and I'll get
Okay.
place application in. So.
Still gotta get them, to sign off on it, yeah.
And what's the latest update on the RFP for the cell tower? Just background information, the new hospital water tower that's going up. Medfield is looking to put an RFP out to see if there's cell companies that will put their wires onto the new water tower, very similar to the one that is on Mount Nebo. And the background was that a private owner in Dover, just over the Medfield line, the Evergreen area of town, originally proposed to put a cell tower there. That was later withdrawn. There was some discussion of putting a cell tower in the property of Dover-Sherburne Regional High School. After other hearings, that also was withdrawn. And Medfield was looking to see if we could issue an RFP to see if those cell companies were interested in using our water tower. Where are we with that, Mike?
I reviewed the RFP with Dave Baxon. He's all set with it. He's chairman of the radio study committee, I think, whatever they call it now. And so we'll just issue it, get it out and issue it this summer. The tower is expected to be completed in, I believe, November. So if we get it out this summer, there's plenty of time to review it, make an award.
Good, excellent.
Great. Thank you.
It was interesting when I talked to Dave Maxon. He said, he mentioned one town. I can't remember what the town it was. He said they put out a rolling application, because he said the process with these cell companies is very different. It's all budgetarily controlled, and what they do is, if it's in the budget, they can do it. If it isn't in the budget, they can't do it. So sometimes you'll put out an RFP and they don't have the money in the budget and they can't do it. And if you put it out a month later or 2 months
All of a sudden,
later,
boom,
it's in the
they get a
budget and
yeah.
they can do it. So he said this town issued a RFP every 2 weeks.
Wow.
Keep it
Just a rolling.
Until they come up
rolling
with the
RFP.
money.
Until they had it all booked up, or so to speak?
I'd never heard that being done. I don't know how you do it.
That's an expensive proposition.
Yes, 'cause you have to advertise in the Central Register and local papers, so.
Yeah.
I think we'll try the straight method first.
To see how you do.
Contact, I mean, there's only about 4 or 5 carriers who'd be
Anyways,
interested anyway, so.
Good.
Okay, under new business, vote to sign a contract with G&R Construction, Inc., contractors for the new public safety building.
Yes.
Mike?
At the last meeting, you voted to award the contract.
Yep.
The indication at the time was that they would draw up the contracts,
and
have it
they've done it.
reviewed by council and prepared for your signature. So tonight, you have before you, I believe there's
Awesome.
3 copies of the contracts.
Very nice.
And you also have a notice to proceed to the general contractor.
Has town council approved them all?
Yes.
So I'd like to make the motion, I believe, unless anyone has any questions, you have to vote to sign the contract, obviously, and also to vote to issue the notice to proceed.
Actually, did you say town council? It wasn't town council that reviewed these, it was a special council that the permanent building committee engaged.
Oh, okay.
So,
Is that-
And why did they engage special counsel instead of town council? Greater
They
familiarity?
discussed it, and they decided they wanted him to review other aspects of it, including the bid documents that were put out and the contract. So they just thought that he had more expertise in this than our own council.
Have
so-
you reviewed them as well, Mike?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and
I
you're-
haven't, as town council would remind me, I'm not an attorney, but to the best of my knowledge, they appear to be okay.
And you're okay
yes.
with them?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll second the motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
All right,
Aye.
excellent.
Opposed?
That's great.
We
You
have
should-
a vote to issue notice of proceed, which we just did.
Yep.
Discussion of State Hospital LDA. Is that you, Christine?
Yes, there's a letter in your file that I was requested to draft. It's been drafted, it's been approved and edited by Peg Stolfa, who is our attorney on the mediation for the hospital. Under the LDA, you'll recall, we had a provision in there regarding our easements and access to the canoe boat launch area. The letter asks DCAM that we're enacting under the 2-year provision that we would like DCAM to do that. The question arose today as to whether or not that letter should be signed today, since the State Hospital Planning Committee that you have tasked with looking at the future of the property was not aware of the issue and has not been vetted on that. They have not seen it, and I don't believe most of them have been vetted on the issue.
Is there a way maybe first we can get them a copy and bounce that off of?
Yes, I talked to the
them?
chairman, I've talked to Steve Nolan, who is also on the mediation committee. I know they are meeting tomorrow. I spoke with John Thompson, who would also like to speak with them about it. He thought they were already aware of this issue, so.
I just want to make sure we're not overstepping, that everybody knows what's going on.
I'd like to just
so-
have everybody on the same page.
Yeah. So can we forward this then to them so they can, that would be my opinion, comment on that
Yep.
first, then get back to us? I don't know how the other members of the board feel.
That's fine.
That's fine with me.
They need to see everything
Yeah.
and sign off on it if we're gonna let them be in charge and advise us on
It was
the
a,
path we're going.
The LDA was worked out by the negotiation committee, which was a 5-member committee. Most of the people on the master planning committee were not
Right.
part of that process at all, and so this will be just total news to them.
In
So-
in the interest of expediency, would we get an opinion from the selectmen that if it were to be approved by the master planning committee, that you guys would sign it? I mean, rather than have to wait for the next selectmen's meeting? We are faced with...
Can we use the mic? I'm sorry, Bill, just so the
Sorry,
people at home can hear that.
Can I just see that?
Should ask for it first, I'm sorry. My only concern is that it's been a little over a month since I discovered that the design for the parking lot did not allow for any access other than coming across the core campus. And the construction is going to be completed within the next roughly 3.5 months. So I feel a certain urgency to get the letter out there before,
That makes sense.
they shut the door on the opportunity to even change the design. I'm not particularly concerned about whether they actually wind up constructing the road itself. I'm more concerned that the design of the parking lot will accept what the road turns out to be.
That makes sense, yeah. Yeah.
So again, if you would consider, approving conditionally approving the letter, and then you could sign it, based on the master planning committee having approved it. If they don't approve it, then we'll have to go back to the drawing boards.
Or if they make any changes to it.
Yeah.
That's fine, yeah.
I had actually made a change this afternoon that I had emailed to Chris, but it didn't get into the drafts that's sitting here on the table. The letter is very polite. The attorney in me added a line to it that said, please accept this as notice of our exercising our rights under the LDA too. And I think that makes it very clear that as to contractually that we're requiring them to do something.
Yeah, I had made a suggestion too, that I tried to be polite, and
I apologize. I apologize for not incorporating that. Things got a little off the rails once we decided the master
Yeah.
planning committee should probably look at it. That was actually in my original version, and our attorneys and others had softened it. I was way more forceful than everybody else was.
Well, thanks. You and I are on the same
Exactly.
page then.
Well, okay, can we make sure?
I think it's important that that be in there myself, that it's a very clear direction to decamp to take action.
What's your recommendation to the board then on the letter then? You have one?
You can approve it conditioned upon the master planning committee reviewing it.
Then we can get it
I
up,
ju-
and
I-
then Richard could always come in and just
Yeah.
sign.
But I just don't want, several other committees we've had the issue with before where the board of selectmen have made a decision and we haven't asked them and it's,
Absolutely.
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 Yeah, and I apologize. Bill and I were talking about drafting the letter. I think that the letter's dated April 20th, and it wasn't until this morning when I started thinking through the process after looking at the reviews and the edits that we really probably should
Yeah.
talk to them about it. They are part of the future development of that.
We did get in
Look at
trouble in the
tomorrow night.
past.
Yes, exactly. So I think they can at least be made aware of the situation, whether or not they're, and it's up to the Board of Selectmen. The LDA gives you the authority to enact this provision, but I think they at least need to review it and be aware of it.
Well, I just think it's important they be involved, and they may have changes and other suggestions themselves to that, in which case, I don't know how we,
Yeah.
This may come back to you and not be as clear cut as it is tonight, unfortunately.
well, somebody want to make a motion then?
I move that we send the letter with the amendment that makes it clear that it's a directive, that we're exercising our rights, included in the letter, subject to the master planning committee expressing expressing a desire that we not send the letter, so that if they tell us they don't want us to send it, then
Or what if they have changes or amendments?
well, if they have a change or amendment, it needs to come back to us then.
Right, then that's fine.
Okay.
That's so noted, yeah.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. And discussion of the proposed selectmen's calendar.
Ready.
Mike has put together.
Through the summer,
Copy of
got
that?
the summer season. Yeah,
And
that's
I
good.
haven't checked to make sure everybody's availability. I wanted you people to review this and
Okay.
check on your own availability
Okay.
first to see if that works out with your own schedules, and
then we
then
can-
start contacting the
Good.
various groups.
The only thing I would add, actually two things. One we mentioned before, if Ed Hinckley could come in when Ken does. And I
Sure.
think that's on, is that June 2nd?
June 2nd, yeah.
Yeah,
And could we also add, because there's quite a bit of discussion, we were just talking about Metacomet Street, we had talked about the Metacomet sidewalk, could he give us an update on that as well? Metacomet Street sidewalk, and Ed Hinckley update on a master plan for the tree
trees.
planting in town, in particular in the Baker's Pond, Meeting House Pond area. Any other discussion the board has, suggestions, recommendations?
no, I'll take a look at this and see, but this is,
And
This
and
is
he
good.
worked
This'd
out-
be nice.
I know you had a concern before of just overloading, and I think he did a pretty good job of making sure that we were
we just
not
see focus on a
overloading.
couple of things, yeah, because then it just gets to be too much.
Pete, any comments on that?
I haven't had a chance to even
Oh.
look at it really, but like Mark, I'll take a look, and if I have any input, I'll send it off.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have any changes, just send them to me, and I can put them in, incorporate them, and then send them out to everybody to at least take a look
Yeah.
at.
When we move through, we have a number of licenses and permits. We have the Council of Aging requesting a one-day wine and malt beverage permit for June 17th, July the 15th, and August 5th. There's summer cookouts. August 19th, a potluck supper. August 26th, Chico's Fall Fashion Show. And September 16th, Summer's Almost Over Cookout.
So I'll, so moved.
Second?
All in favor? Yes. Aye. We have the Long Meadow Road neighbors looking to hold a block party on Saturday, May the 16th, from 1:30 to 5, with a rain date of May the 30th. It will be held at Evergreen Way and Spring Valley Road. Is the chief of police aware of these? Does he comment?
Yeah, they always
Yes,
talk.
Evelyn sends these to him for
She's
vetting
okay?
first.
Do we have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. The Medfield Farmers Market, Allison Galley, who's the market manager, requests permission to hold the summer 2015 Farmers Market. That's great to see that come back. June 4th through September 24th on the lawn of the First Parish Church on North Street. Also request permission to post signs promoting the weekly market. And are they told where they can post the signs? Do we have a certain,
There's usually 7 locations where.
so they know it's not just anywhere?
Yeah.
Motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. Cheryl O'Malley of the Friends of the Dwight Derby House requests permission to post future signs per attached monthly schedule announcing events. And
That's someplace in there, right? We'll print out.
she has a list, can I just say, as outlined in her sheet?
So,
There's a large number of them.
boatload, yes.
There's
yeah.
all kinds of things, which is great to see the Dwight
very good.
Derby
They're very busy
doing a
this
number of things. So we have a motion on the schedule as posted.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. The Music Association requests permission to place signs promoting Medfield High School Pops Concert on May the 16th in the high school gym.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Bill Pope and Chris McHugh Potts request permission to post signs May 30th to June 13th advertising the annual Zulu Arts Festival on June the 13th.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Medfield Lions Club requests permission to hold their Lions Toll Booth on Saturday, May the 9th, 2015, from 9 a.m. to noon time at North and Main Street intersection in front of the Blue Moon Bakery and perhaps at the transfer station.
So,
At
yeah.
the transfer station?
I don't know what in front of the Blue Moon Bakery means, but that's private property, so it would be one thing to say you can do it, but they would still be subject to approval.
For a case that came down saying they could solicit on private property, or is that just for charitable groups? Well, would be a charitable cause.
No, that's,
They get the wrong address here anyways. They get the wrong
Political
property, right?
signatures,
North and Main, and they talk
petitions.
about Starbucks?
So that
North and
didn't
Main.
cover.
No, that's
They wanna
separate.
do it at the roadways.
Oh, okay.
That's
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, then there's a comma here. Sorry
Do
about
they
that.
get permission to
And
sell
then,
Christmas
so there's
trees?
3 places potentially.
It's my new font throwing you off.
So let me suggest this. Why don't we grant them permission for noon in North Street and the front of the transfer station, and just let them know that the Blue Moon Bakery is private
Private.
and beyond our control.
well, you can give them permission, but they need to get the private property owner's permission, that would be the notation.
How can we give permission if it's private property?
Because it's still a public, it's a double permission thing.
Oh, okay, we can, but they
Even
would
if
still
if
be.
the private owner had given them permission already, they'd still need permission from us to rent it.
Okay,
Okay.
good. So-
Can we make a motion to that effect and then let them know that they will have to also approach Blue Moon?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye. And Chaz Agostini?
Yep.
A Medfield High School, a member of the organization Bikes Not Bombs.
Oh, good, yeah.
Requests permission to post signs promoting the annual collection of bicycles at the transfer station on Saturday, May the 30th. Do they know where?
Yes, we had a conversation with him.
Okay.
Where he got posted.
So
Motion to that
moved.
effect.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
And selectmen reports. Mr. Fisher.
Just going to be a big day tomorrow. Wednesday is the kickoff meeting with the consultants for the Medfield State Hospital. So it's going to be a big day to kind of get them jump-started and get going with the process. So it's a big thing for Medfield. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to hearing what they have to say. And it's great that the committee's been really moving along very nicely at a nice pace to kind of keep that going so that it's not lingering, and we can keep moving forward on that. So that's all I've got, really, just some good news going forward.
And Pete?
I mentioned that I went down to the Wentworth Institute of Technology to see their student presentations of concepts for the Medfield State Hospital, and it was really exciting. They have access to computer-aided design, and they have very nice presentations that they put out in terms of giving you a visual of what things could look like at the state hospital. And I guess there were about 18 different student groups that did different ideas for their hotels, different housing, and it's very exciting to see different people think about possibilities for the town land up there. I want to thank the Medfield Youth Baseball and Softball for letting me march in their parade, and I think next year they should have us march in front of the fire engine so we don't breathe the diesel fuel the whole way.
Could have been worse, could have been horses.
I did that one more.
Should have Bob Larkin.
Then you could just wear your boots and tromp right through them.
Have to be very alert.
The Medfield Cares About Prevention is working, I mentioned before, on a tip line. That has not progressed, I guess, since I last mentioned it. They're also, they voted at their last meeting to ask this board to support raising the age to buy tobacco to 21, but they haven't sent in the request to us. We also got, I know, a mailing that I had, I think, scanned and sent to the two of you that came from some consumer retail group that was asking for the same sort of thing.
Several retail associations, I know combined associations.
Yeah, I sent it down to Board of Health, and they said they already had a copy, and they said we'd be getting these left and right. So they expect to be bombarded with.
They're the ones that are in
information on
control
both
of it,
sides.
aren't they? Aren't they the ones that would make the, raise the age to 18 to buy tobacco?
I think they want to raise it to 20 or 21, yeah.
So that across the boards, rather than one of them make a decision and gets prejudiced because the others don't want to go along with
I'm not sure what you're saying.
it.
Which board has the authority to do it?
Board of Health.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that. the
Oh,
Board of
no, I
Health
thought
is-
you were talking about the petitions from these associations, why they're pushing it.
I think one of them wanted to exclude from the regulation from the age, raising the age of electronic cigarettes, which I assume is not going to be excluded, I think.
Yeah.
The state's working on a
The
comprehensive.
AG is working on regulations for those. I mean, those should be regulated, because it's basically just a form of.
It's a nicotine delivery system is what it is.
Well, I read an article that said they're coming out with bubble gum flavored electronic cigarettes,
Oh, great,
and Coke,
yeah.
cola flavored
Yeah.
cigarettes. That's like a way to get your kids hooked.
Yeah. At lunch today, I read the parking study for the downtown that Sarah Raposa gave us just about a year ago, last June. I think that we should add that to our to-do list and come up with some sort of action on that. It actually suggests several things, ways of getting people to not park as long in the premium spaces, which to me sounds like you charge people money that you put in parking meters or something like that. But I think that we should ask Sarah, or somehow we should move that along, and rather than just waiting. One of the suggestions was to charge a fee for businesses moving into the downtown that do not provide sufficient parking, to start creating that fund that can then be used to build a parking lot. I think they said parking spaces are 25,000 to 50,000 per space as a
Is this
cost
in
to
Boston?
build.
Boston? Oh.
It was a study for Medfield, so I was taking it for Medfield, but,
I can just add a little bit to that, because I also talked to Sarah on that, and she's looking at that as part of this summit of the downtown. And it's not like she's forgotten about it. I know this was about a year ago, but between the hospital and other things, but she wanted to have this plan done first, and she's looking in the fall to focus on that with the summit, and we'll be able to address that. So I agree with you, and maybe in September, we can bring her in and kind of see where she's going with that. Unless you want to do something.
no, I'm just, it shouldn't get lost, is my sense. Somehow it needs to get continued forward, and if it's.
I have been in touch with her, and she's aware of that, and she feels that come fall, that she can put more focus on that.
And I know Ken Feeney's having some preliminary work done on a parking deck across the street here, so he probably ought to be invited to that meeting to
Or could kind of give us some.
give you some idea of
preliminary ideas, yeah.
what the likelihood of it is. And there's also an issue where next door, they would like to put in temporary parking on town land at their own expense that would be public parking. So I'll get you a plan on that.
It has to come to the Board of Selectmen? or
Well,
planning
yeah,
board?
because you own the land, the
Okay.
town owns the land.
Which town land is it?
You know where that road, that dirt road cut through and behind, that, a lot of that is town land,
Oh,
so.
I didn't know that.
I
Okay.
think the owner of that building feels he could put in about 15 parking spaces that would be public, but because they would be on town land, but he would construct them.
Oh, excellent.
Well, I think you need to take a look at that.
Mm.
That's also the area where and I don't think we'll put a deck in for a while, but if you were to put a deck in, that would probably be the ramp up to the deck.
Mhm.
That area, so you wouldn't lose any parking spaces in the existing lot, but.
Yeah.
But that's, it's just, I think we ought to have the police chief, we ought to have, as well as Ken and when Sarah comes in, yeah.
I'd like to see the chief and find out about the lights, too. I stopped I was at North Street, and I stopped at Main Street, headed south on North Street, and there was a light that I had never seen before. It was just like a left turn arrow. You couldn't go straight. I didn't know if that's a permanent thing, or
Oh,
I just wanted.
at North
Green
Street?
and, was it both? The green and the
There was a
yellow?
red, and then there was a green left turn arrow.
Yeah, that's, coming down North Street?
Yeah.
South on North Street at
Then the
Main.
left turn arrow goes out, and you can still go green, but then you have to yield to northbound traffic coming out.
Yeah, but he's saying one was red.
Yeah, I mean.
Couldn't go straight, or,
The delay should be coming up Pleasant Street,
Yeah.
not going down north. The
Yeah.
idea
Or
was
maybe
to
it was
move the
just,
traffic down north.
There's like a little
Might have
glitch.
been, yeah.
yeah,
Because
maybe
normally
it was
it's green
during the
arrows
glitch
are-
season.
Yeah, because normally it's the green left arrow, and then it just goes
Can you
green.
check with the chief, because that shouldn't be a red light there.
Yeah.
It wasn't when I came in just now.
Oh,
It was just that one time that I saw it doing that. Might have been an aberration.
Yeah.
And then the final thing I'll mention is that we had talked about having a financial planning summit between the selectmen, the Water and Sewer Board, and the Warrant Committee after the annual town meeting. I had sent out to the two of you guys and Mike and Chris my suggested agenda and a series of documents that I put in a Dropbox for everybody. When you decide if you want to do that, I'm happy to share the link to the Dropbox and the other documents with anybody you want me to, so just
I
let me
actually
know.
discussed that with Mike. He thought, again, with the Water and Sewer Board, right in the beginning of the fall would probably be a good time for that. Unless you're feeling it's too late.
Well, if we're gonna be thinking about doing the financial planning for the annual town meeting next year differently, I think that you'd want to do it before then. I think you'd want to do it during the summer.
Well, the summertime, people do take vacations,
Yeah,
so.
so you don't get everybody then,
We
but-
don't get
Tough,
anyone.
yeah.
We don't
And
get
and right now, they're they're involved with the water tower and the rate setting. They gotta get going on the rate setting process too, so. But, I can talk to them, and if they're available,
I know that the-
Anytime through the end of June,
Yeah.
before school's out, you could catch
The Water
everybody.
and Sewer Board is not gonna meet in May because of all the hectic business around town meeting. So they would be meeting in June. And then I don't know what their schedule is.
yeah, well, I could ask Maureen to check with them and see what might be.
Good.
Okay,
Then, so.
okay, we'll follow up. Anything else, Pete?
No.
Just mine, I too went to the Wentworth display that the students had with the state hospital, just incredible work that those kids do, and just, part of the problem is they don't have a price tag. So it's very nice what they can put in there, but it does give you a lot of good ideas of, and you can look and see how different buildings were used, and a lot of glass were used, and they saved the brick, and I thought it was very helpful, and it gave you just some real good ideas. I too marched in the baseball parade, which was nice. youth, the recreation people, the youth baseball, the youth soccer, the youth lacrosse. We just have some great youth sports here in Medfield. And just kudos and just salute to all the coaches and the parents, and just tremendous amount of volunteer work that goes into our youth sports. So just thanks to them. Can we maybe get a thank you note? I stopped over at the cleanup that we had on Saturday. Reverend Jonathan Chichilli and Reverend Mark Ames kind of headed that up, and they did a nice job. They raked and cleaned all of the gazebo area, all of Meeting House Pond area. They just did a real nice job on that. Can we just get a note to them on behalf of the board, thanking them for their efforts? And also, I would like to thank, at the same time, the Gristmill Committee was down at the gristmill, and they were raking and cleaning under Dick Judge and that group. They did a great job down along Kingsbury's. And to follow up on that, and I'd just like to see the other board members' opinion on that. I see a lot, now that I'm going to Boston now and then, you see the sheriff's department has some of the inmates picking up litter along the side of the roads, and they bag it all there. I walk the Hartford Street area, Causeway, Main Street. It's just some a lot of litter, and it's kind of a sad fact that we have people in town that litter. And maybe because it's 109, it's probably non-Medfield people that are doing all the littering, but there's a lot of litter there. If we put a call in, if I put a call into Sheriff Bellatti's office, would the board have any issues? I don't know, townspeople, they're well supervised, usually they're
Community
minimal.
service, a lot of them, they've done work here before.
Yeah, I think people fear, you're gonna get Aaron Hernandez out here cleaning up, and, but what generally what it is, it's people that are in for relatively minor things. Alcohol, DUI, driving offense, sort of things like that, so I don't think they're any threat.
I think the chief has coordinated it the last time they were here, so you may want to touch base with him.
Well, okay, so if
Yeah.
I were,
You know who to
if
talk
I
to.
were to
Yeah.
the chief, do you guys have any issue with that?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay. I'll follow up on that. Also, thanks to the Cultural Council, I attended a musical. It was a play called The Operator that was held at First Parish, and that was one of the grants that we went to last year that they received, and they just did a great job with that musical. And again, because of the Cultural Council and the grants, we're getting many of these different things in Medfield, which is just a plus. The other thing, I received a number of calls, probably more calls than any other issue, over the weekend. I don't know if you guys got calls or emails, on the trees that they were being cut down on the state hospital. So I went up there. What they were referring to is the Thistle project.
That's right.
And they have the skirts that are around the trees, and I think a lot of people saw that and thought they were marked to be cut
Gonna be
down.
down next week.
There was like 50 of them. But the point of that is to bring attention to the trees, which I guess it certainly did, and also to bring attention to the grounds up there that the town now owns, and people now looking at that begin to think, and as Mark mentioned, Wednesday, more thoughts will be going into what is going to happen up at the state hospital. So just to let people know, those trees are not being cut down. It's part of a project, and they'll stay up there till, I believe, October.
There are trees that need to be cut down on the town land
Yeah.
up there, but unfortunately, a lot
Some
of
of
the
them
sugar maples
are
along
just too
the
old.
entrance driveway are pretty dead.
I just wish we could figure out a way to keep the wackos from trying to break into the buildings.
Is that still being a problem?
Yeah, I was talking to Bobby Kennedy, and he said they're probably gonna try to have to weld some of the
Oh,
doors.
well, do a shut that, yeah.
So they're going with crowbars,
Yeah,
pry them open.
yeah.
There's nothing in them, they're dangerous.
Yeah.
But, I don't know
It's a
who
thought,
these
well,
people are.
yeah.
We don't think it's kids, we don't think kids would be that, going up there with crowbars. These are probably adults that are,
Yeah.
and probably coming,
It's almost a cult-like type of thing that
Yeah.
does that.
Sure. to get, so they can say that they've been in there, obviously, yeah.
And they could film
It's like
themselves.
old
Right.
prisons
On
and old
YouTube, you know, it's just,
institutions, and whether or not
yeah.
there's paranormal activity. and-
Very.
Can I just follow up on Pete's comment, because I don't know if you read the news this morning, but I forget what town it was in. Kids were playing outside and a hunk of a tree came down and hit two young kids.
Chelsea,
One-
yeah.
Where was it?
Chelsea.
Chelsea. Can we just maybe ask John Thompson and maybe get a hold of Ed Hinckley just to check out some of those maples?
Ed could make a very quick tour and
Yeah,
indicate the
if
ones
there's
that should
something
come
he
down.
feels that's gonna be, because we have a lot of people now that are walking in and out of there.
Yeah, well,
I
have
believe
to-
he was actually up there today doing that. After your last meeting, we had talked to John Thompson from Building and Grounds, and he was gonna talk to Bob Kennedy, so I think they were actually up
Oh,
there
great.
today.
Right.
Yeah, I also have to get Tom Gragliano had asked that we have Ed go up to his neighborhood, and he thinks there's some trees dying up in that area, and
Yeah.
take a look at it.
You either have the tiger beetle, the red pine beetle, you maybe have the allergen, but if you come up on the upper end of Phillip Street, you have trees of all sizes that are Tom Cragliano, Phillip Street. We may be having a infestation of the pine trees in Medfield. And you will see that the pine needles are all turning copper color. There's no rhyme to where they are. It could be at the top, it could be in the middle.
Yeah.
It is not next to the road where the salt would have affected them.
Well, we'll go up and
in
take a
any
look at
manner, shape, or
it.
form.
You know,
But there are hundreds of them that are in pretty bad shape. Some have diameters 6 inches, 4 inches, and it's spreading throughout town. I see it in Dover, I see it in Walpole. I did call Guy LaChance and left a message this morning up in Clinton, who is for the forestry operations in this county.
Can we
I did
have,
talk to Bobby Kennedy. He's gonna take Ed Hinckley up there to look at it. I looked for the woolly adulate, but I can't find his boring, and I looked for others in the trees. This has been ongoing for a couple of years. This is not since winter, it's not winter kill. It's not coming about from dryness.
Tom will take a look at it. Okay,
Okay,
we'll get up there and take a look at it.
Please beware, and the other people in town. Thank you.
and then just two other things. I just want to kind of apologize. I don't know if it's the board's fault, but we're trying to work on communications, making sure if we make a decision, every board is also aware of that. Ken had asked us to have the landfill, the transfer station open on Sunday, which we approved, and we never notified the SWAT folks, and they had to scramble at the last minute. They didn't even know the landfill was gonna be open. So I just think we as a board, myself included, need to do a better job of, if we vote something, making sure that everybody is aware of that.
Yeah, although I think the main purpose of keeping it open was because of the bad weather at the beginning of April.
Oh, yeah, I
and
have
snow.
no issue with that,
Trash,
but they, all of a sudden, being open, people would be bringing stuff down, they didn't know about it. It was just an oversight
Yeah.
on our city.
I think, by the way, the transfer station guys did a heck of a job getting the swap area ready, because they were, at the same time, they were trying to repair all the roads. And then they had to put up those structures, the tents, whatever they put down.
Not only that, I mean, they did a lot of work. First of all, they graded it, they enlarged it. They graded it so that you're not gonna have flooding and drainage. They then lined the entire area with the, I don't know where they got those massive blocks from, but it's a nice border that's there now. They set up that tent, which is gonna be a huge plus to the SWAT people, because before, they had to, at 3:30 or 4 o'clock, take everything, move it. Now they can just leave it there. So, again, thanks to the highway. Maybe you can relay to Ken this board's thank you, because they did a lot of work on that.
Yeah. And hey, when you're down there, it might be nice to thank them
Thank
too.
you, guys.
They did, right. I did. I actually got a hold of Bobby Kennedy and just thanked him, because I went down and there's a lot of work that they
Yes,
did
it
there.
was, yeah.
And the last thing, can you just let Ken know, we're still doing the potholes, correct, filling?
Yeah, they are. In fact, he was concerned because a lot of people thought when we ground the street, the patches, that we weren't gonna come back and fill them, and they have gone back. They've been all over town trying to do it, but there's so many. He was telling me how many tons of asphalt they're putting out.
Can you just remind me, there's, on Ledge Tree Extension, there's a number in there, I don't know if you could.
Ledge Tree.
Okay, and just some informational, MEMA is the whole briefings. It sounds like the president okayed that first blizzard to reimburse the cities and towns,
Yeah,
but not the larger.
No, and unfortunately, the first blizzard, it's only 48 hours. They've designated a 72-hour period, and within that 72-hour period, you can pick your 48 hours. But that's it. So we're hoping that we'll be able to, we have a 329,000 snow budget. We budgeted 200,000 in our tax rate estimate. We're hoping we get enough out of that period to cover the 129. If not, there's a little flexibility depending on what happens with our local receipts. Or we can, under that new legislation, if we're $25,000 short, you can carry it over the next year. So.
The Norfolk County Agricultural School announced a tuition rate of $1,868.
How can they-
on that?
How come they charge so little?
It's over and above their regular budget.
Oh.
This is a law they got passed through for a
Okay.
few years, and a lot of the communities are refusing to pay.
That's not their cost per child.
Oh no, their cost is about over $20,000
Yeah,
per student.
I think it said if you were out of county, it's 24,000, something like that. It's on the actual paper they sent, but out of county is 24,000.
The regular schools are really aggravated with this because they already get so much more per student than the regular schools. Now, granted, part of it may be needed because they have some more
Who
technical
draws it?
program.
We have a representative that votes on that?
It's, there's the county commissioners. It's part of county government, and we do have an advisory board. Ken Feeney is actually a representative. He's very good at attending.
But
21,
he doesn't
yeah.
get to vote, it's just.
I knew it
the
was
commissioners.
over 20.
They get to hear about it. It's the commissioners who really make the decision.
Unlike the Tri-County Vote School, we do have a representative.
Yeah.
Okay, we also have some copies of ZBA decisions concerning property up on Elm Street. And we also have information from the Medfield Conservation Commission. Just remind the board, we need to make sure we sign the vendor warrant here and the payroll warrant down in the town accountant's office. Anything else, Christine or
Yeah.
Mike or Mark? you have?
Yes, I do have a few things. For one thing, the police will be moving tomorrow. They
Excellent.
expect, as of tomorrow night, they will be operational down at their temporary quarters on West Street.
Nice.
What's the address you know?
You would ask that.
93.
93 is it? Yeah, it's the old, where Comark was located anyway, the old Comark building.
Look for the cars. Lights on the top.
And the phone numbers will still be the same and everything, and they'll have signs the chief is putting up to direct people to the new location. Fire department is also moved down to the town garage or in process of
When is
moving.
they asking you?
They're in
Last
the
week.
process of moving. I think they're still doing it.
Yeah.
They're
They're moving files now. Equipment and the gentlemen have moved, the firemen have moved down there, but it's just files are moving now.
The bond sale will be a week from Wednesday, I believe. It's May 12th anyway. So we had our phone call with Moody's on Monday morning, and it's going very well. You know, they were very happy with the financial condition of the town. I don't think we'll get a AAA rating, but we have the second highest rating, AA1, and I'm almost positive we'll keep that. They'll let us know Thursday morning when the committee votes. But I guess we should wish everybody a happy Cinco de Mayo. So it is today. So yes, not tequila. I learned my lesson on that a long time ago. This is okay. I was going to mention the swap area opened last weekend, so that's working well. And the cleanup Saturday, you've already mentioned. I did get, as I promised, I got the copy of the master plan components. I've given each a copy of it. It tells you what is in the master plan. I know they kept referring to 8 or 9 components, and I was never quite sure what they were. So that you may find helpful when you're talking about master planning process. And also, I don't know if you noticed it, but the building next door has been raised.
Yeah.
The entire building is up, jacked up about a foot.
Yeah.
And they have to pour a new foundation. You know, I thought it was going to be some big operation during the daytime, and I went out at lunchtime the other day, Monday, and I said, it's already up. I didn't even notice it.
It's a huge building.
It's a huge building to be up that way, that high, yeah. So it went very smoothly, you know, so we didn't have to wear hard hats to work for it.
Any projected dates on that?
I wouldn't even begin to touch that. You know, they have a lot of work to do in that building. Sprinkler systems, elevator, you know, restaurant equipment, all that special fire safety equipment for that. My guess would be a minimum of 6 months, but I don't know yet.
That's gonna be a lot. Be beautiful when it's done, though. It's gonna look cool.
Yes.
I think it will.
It's gonna be a
It
great
did.
addition to the downtown, I think.
I was surprised how many seats they get in there. It's like, what, 126 or something, or, yeah.
Wow.
That's right.
Good. I
Um,
heard one point that they were gonna put a law firm in there. I thought, what a waste of a first floor in downtown Medfield.
We don't need more lawyers.
They're going to be on the second floor.
We had the bar.
Yeah. Okay, and that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else to come before the board? Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff Marsden, and you're watching Medfield.tv.